Welcome to the Gem Series, powered by Rocket Level. On this podcast, we empower entrepreneurs to succeed by setting big goals, executing like a pro, and having a fearless mindset. The Gem Series is all about investing in yourself. We're here to share the path to getting what you want out of life by sharing the stories of entrepreneurs who have done this themselves, providing thorough research from our team on what careers and habits are yielding the best results, and discussing the mindset it takes to overcome the obstacles that all future entrepreneurs will face. Investing in yourself starts with putting in the work every single day, and this podcast is here to help you do exactly that. My name is Blake Chapman. I'm the Vice President of the Ambassador Program here at Rocket Level, and I am thrilled to be your host for the Gem Series.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gem Series. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to have Chen on the podcast, professional racer, and also is in private equity. Pretty amazing. I don't know how you find the time to balance and do everything that you've been doing, man, but I was totally fascinated when I heard about your story. And another special surprise, we're actually at the Jerry Yang Racing compound where Jerry literally builds race cars. Pretty amazing. I mean, I know as a kid, I always had Hot Wheels and things like that. It's crazy to see that taken to the furthest extent to where you have a whole place dedicated just to churning out these amazing machines. So Nate, how you doing, man? It's good to have you on.
Yeah, Blake, thanks for having me. It's really great to be at the Jerry Yang Racing compound. I mean, this is always really fun to just walk through and see all of the projects that you can probably see in the background. And
absolutely.
there's always something to be, worked on and stuff to do. So yeah. But thank you and appreciate it. And to answer your question, how do I find time? Well, I just don't sleep. I mean, that's the truth of it. I need like 6 hours of sleep. That's good enough for me, six and a half. And anything less than that, I'm a little bit cranky. But yeah, I mean, I love both worlds that I'm a part of. And it's been a wild ride.
It's pretty amazing. I'm sure people on both ends that you meet working in those places are like, dude, how do you do that, man? It is no sleep though. You just got to go for it, I bet. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, look, my daily schedule is, wake up at 8:30, and then, I'm working on my private equity world, I guess, from, 8:45 to roughly, 6, 7, 8. Like, there's no set schedule, and that's what I like. I don't like having a set schedule. I like to have variability every day. And then after that's done and I go work out, then I'm working on my racing program until 12, 1, 2 in the morning. So yeah.
What's a racing program for anybody that doesn't know?
Yeah, I mean, so the funny thing is, like, you'd think like, oh, you're just a race car driver, like that's all you do, but there's so much more that goes into it. And racing's like the fun part. I mean, that's like 10% of my time on the weekends. Like, yes, I'm going out and driving every single weekend, whether it's this car right that you see right next to you, or my practice car.
By the way. This thing is so freaking cool.
It is. Yeah, it's like a childhood dream realized for sure. But, I'm out in my practice car. And then the real work, though, is the business aspect. So, it's building sponsor relationships. It's doing social media stuff. It's getting logistics done for the team. It's coordinating with a bunch of different people. I have a team at the track with me of 6 people, including myself. And so I have a videographer, photographer, 2 mechanics, Jerry's my crew chief, a spotter. And then my parents actually show up to the track and help out with food and stuff like that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Dang, you have a lot of support behind you.
No, you absolutely have to at this level in order to be able to drive. I mean, again, the driving's like the easiest part. Half the battle is just getting the car there and just making sure everything works. And then as long as everything works, like I can usually deliver on the driving part, right?
Man. So have you always had this vision of getting to do what you're doing now?
No, it's funny. I mean, it started out as literally that when I was 13. I went to my first Formula DRIFT event, as a kid, but I looked around and I'd wanted to be some sort of race car driver of some sort since I was a really little kid. But when you looked at NASCAR or Formula One, it was really hard to get into if you didn't come from, a significant background of wealth, right? And but FD at the time, like it was like, wow, I can see myself there. And so then it was, how do I work backwards and figure out a path that can put me there? And so it started with, well, I see the media people have like the best spot on the track. They're the closest to the track. It looks really cool. And I wanted to be more than a spectator. And that's just kind of me in general. I don't want to just watch something. I want to participate in some shape or form. But I was 14 at the time. And so I didn't, I wasn't going to buy a car and drive myself. So I picked up a video camera and just went out there, started filming local events. Pretty quickly, within a year, was shooting professional events and then Formula Drift for a few teams, which funny enough, I think I'm the only media person to go from media to driver.
Dude,
and so
where did that drive come from? Because I guess I'm sure you hear it all the time. You have friends or family members, or just even in passing, you probably hear people go, well, I can't do that. I mean, I'm not rich. It takes a lot of money to be able to do something like that. Or and they just sit and watch their dreams from far away. Like, what made you get creative and, I don't know, make that happen? It's pretty
I'm pretty
cool.
stubborn.
That's awesome.
Mean,
that's
in,
awesome.
In terms of just, hey, it's like I had this vision. It always starts with a vision. It's like, and it's not just racing. It's whether that's going into private equity, which began with investment banking. And then, I wanted to learn how to be a DJ. So I did that. A videographer did that. But it starts with that, the vision and the overall end. And then how do you work backwards and try to eliminate the overwhelming feeling of, hey, there's like 20,000 things. It's just like, okay, well, I want to be a race car driver, but I can be a media videographer first. Let me just focus on that and I'll eventually get to the right path. And I haven't it hasn't been this grand, it has been like a 10-year plan that's actually worked out, funny enough.
That's great.
But it hasn't been super clear. There's just been kind of a general guideline that I knew this is kind of the direction that I wanted to go in, but it wasn't like I had all the details. And then just kind of the details have kind of come in front of me. So it's like, okay, videographer to driver, but then it's like, well, I really need this budget. Like, how am I going to come up with that? What are the 2 highest paying jobs that I can get out of undergrad? I went to the College of William and Mary, and it was either finance or Silicon Valley. And for me personally, I gravitated more towards finance, but then that had its own path of like, how do I get into that? And then it was just work at it. I cold called 50 to 75 alumni to try to get an internship on Wall Street, which happened. And then I converted that to a full-time offer from another investment bank in New York. And then I started my career there. And so, all of this stuff is just kind of culminated in the car that you see next to you.
I just love that there's so many instances that you've pointed out where you've been like, hey, I see an obstacle and I'm going to do the thing that is to some people maybe unthinkable to be able to get to the next level. Even just cold calling colleagues, like, people don't do that. So growing up, did your parents ever reinforce that kind of mindset in you, or, was somebody there that inspired you?
So, my parents have always been super supportive of all of my endeavors, whether, basically just encouraging me to pursue what I want to. Although at the same time, like they've told me at some point, I remember my dad saying, well, you didn't go to Harvard or Yale, so Wall Street's out of the picture. But then I realized, well, that's actually not true. And so sometimes you just have to tell yourself, hey, I believe in this vision. This is the right path, and to trust your gut. Yeah. And just keep on executing, and eventually you're going to get to where you want to get to. But in terms of inspiration, I love to draw inspiration from a bunch of different people in a bunch of different industries. And it's like, that's kind of the thing that I've figured out. It's like, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You just want to add another spoke. You know what I mean?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if I can take I look like Tony Hawk, for instance, childhood idol, skateboarder. I was a skateboarder at one point in my life.
Same here. I love skating.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So with him, he's just been a fantastic ambassador for skateboarding. And it's like, how do I take that image, kind of shape it into my own and apply it to drifting? Because drifting is kind of behind skateboarding, in terms of number of people involved and everything, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
But skateboarding at one point wasn't this big X Games and, ESPN thing. It was very underground. I mean, Tony talks about how he almost went bankrupt trying to start a skateboard company in the 90s, but he just held on. And then he got on ESPN, and then, wow, like things just took off for him. So, but yeah, it's drawing inspiration from a bunch of different people, lots of different mentors and lots of different areas, whether that's private equity, racing, or DJing. Like there's something that you can learn from everybody, and how you take that and package it together and reshape it to whatever you're doing is really like what I like to do.
That's very cool. So I'm like, what's your 900 then? When Tony Hawk hit the 900, I remember that back in the day, whenever he finally did things that have never been done before. But no, I love that mindset. I think that's super, super cool to look at other people that have taken a really great and different path against certain odds and figure, how do I shape something like that for myself? There's a lot you can learn from, for sure. So what's been kind of the scary parts along the way? I would imagine, I don't know, maybe there's none, but I've always run into, there's usually a little something going on where you're like, man, what if this doesn't work out the way I want it to? How do you power through some of that stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, this applies directly to racing, right? It's
Yeah.
like, man, like, what if I don't drive as hard as I need to in order to win? And honestly, you just have to shut that out. Like, there
Yeah.
was an instance back when I was in my pro-am days, so before I turned pro, and it was a difficult track, and I basically had to commit full throttle before the entry, which meant if I messed up, I was going to go into the wall. But if I didn't commit, then I would get sent down into the bank, and basically it was, hey, look, you either do this or just pack it up and go home.
Yeah.
One of those
Yeah.
two. And so you can't be afraid to fail, because it happens. Like, there have definitely been times where I failed either as a business owner, in terms of understanding team dynamics, or even in racing. Like, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
You don't win
Yeah.
every race.
No, that's
no matter
totally
who you
true.
are. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's how you get back up again and then fight and continue to fight and be willing to, accept defeat sometimes, but then move past it, accept it, figure out what went wrong, and then how to course correct for future problems.
Yeah. Something that I always end up talking about with my team is how I've learned to kind of love failure in a way, because I mean, if you're not failing, you're probably not finding your threshold, your the extent of your threshold. Do you ever find that that's kind of the case of, you find where your tap out point is, where you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot go faster than this. How am I going to beat that?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, in terms of like failure, like if it was really easy, if I won every single race that I went to, or if my day job if private equity was super easy, then everybody would do it and it would be really boring.
Yeah.
So honestly, I love the challenge, like the challenge of all the stuff that goes into putting on a professional racing, team. Once you have that object of success, whether that's winning a race or getting a new sponsorship or whatever, and then not only getting that, but then really delivering value for your partners, like that's an amazing feeling.
That absolutely is an amazing feeling. I can imagine just like the thrill of mixing adrenaline and then also like, I don't know, just seeing yourself get better and better and better. I mean, anytime you're in a position to get 1% better every day, I feel like that's just, that's an equation for a life well lived, and I think that's super cool. So in terms of goals, I guess, did you ever have like a very concrete goal that was your first one where you're like, you know what, I'm on a mission. This is my target.
Yeah, I mean, going back to, childhood days, it was, I want to learn everything about Star Wars.
That's amazing.
You know what I mean?
All right, so
I was like, I was a big fan of Boba Fett and read like the Mandalorian, like background story before the show came out, like the original Mandalorian stuff. And it just, I don't know. Again, I think I have this obsessive trait where if there's something that I'm really interested in, I just can't shut it off.
I'm exactly that way too, man. It's funny. It's like anything that's novel, I'll just obsessively go into it for a long time. Yeah. So do you have random stuff that enters?
Oh yeah, no, totally. I mean, the New York Mafia, like watching tons of documentaries. So I lived in Manhattan for a few years.
Polly Walnuts, man.
I know, right? That just happened a few days ago. Yeah.
You lived in Manhattan though?
I did. So I lived on 63rd and 2nd my first year, which is Upper East Side. And then 43rd between 1st and 2nd, which is Tudor City. And on my way to work every day, I could, if I wanted to, I could take a path that brought me right past Sparks Steakhouse where Paul Castellano got shot. So it's just like really cool to see history like in person. I don't know, I'm a huge like 20th century history nerd. Happy to admit that. And so I don't know, something stupid like that where I just like Wikipedia, just like for my own knowledge. I'm just like curious to hear the story and just, the dialogue in Goodfellas. I actually just rewatched it again last night.
Really?
Yeah, because it was on Netflix and I was
it's
like,
such a classic, man.
I've seen it 100 times. Yeah, but it's great. So I don't know. There's just all types of stuff. It's not just like the big things like the racing, the private equity career. It's just the small things too that I find something interesting. I just genuinely have, curiosity about learning more.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I feel like staying curious is kind of a key component too, because I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody who just like wants more, but they're not even looking for it. They're not looking for any kind of an answer to whatever their problem is or anything like that. So I feel like curiosity is such a key component sometimes. So for me, another thing I was kind of curious about looking into you and all that, I'm like, dude, do you ever have a time where you want to give up? Like, have you ever Have you ever run into something like that before?
No, I mean, burnout's real.
Yeah.
I mean, it
not
is.
just on the tires.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a great one.
You probably heard it 100 times. No.
Yeah, no. Yeah, burnouts are real and they're really fun to do. But the other part of burnout is not fun. I mean, I can remember the first time I burned out from my investment banking career, which previous life, but I had been working, 9 a.m. to 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 a.m. 7 days a week. And after, a month or two of that, like I just couldn't pick my head up off the table. Like, even if, it was really rough. And that, it wasn't so much of a choice that I had. It was just, this is like what I have to do as part of my job and role. But
totally,
the light at the end of the tunnel is just, hey, like life's going to get better. And especially going into the Wall Street career, like, you're going to be working 7 days a week, 100 hours, and it's going to be crazy. And it's going to be really rough at points. But then it's honestly set me in a path that I would not have been able to do this without the funding that I've made from investment banking and then private equity. And, that's tough, like in terms of burning out and whatever, but you can always kind of step back a little bit and, exercise, that helps a lot. Sometimes just going, like something I did in New York was I would go by myself to the movie theaters on Sundays and just like watch a movie. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because it forced me to not look at my phone for a couple of hours. Yeah. And just to escape. Right.
That's such a good idea.
Yeah.
Plus like mental resiliency, I think comes from all of that probably too.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, anyway, just finding things and outlets and ways to release kind of like that stress is super important. And if you can't do that, it's really, really hard to just keep going, because as much as I like, I'm this machine that never sleeps or whatever, I definitely do need breaks. So,
hey, even a machine has to have its oil changed.
There you go.
Hey, no, that's
exactly.
I think that's so important for everybody to realize too, is because, the stakes are, it depends on how you look at things. Like, if you're burning out, then the stakes of you quitting are just that you're like, oh, I give up. But the stakes of you taking a breather, that's far lower than just giving up on your dream or, something like that. So I don't know.
No, but to your point, like, sometimes whether that's like a boss telling you a deadline is absolutely tomorrow. There's ways to push back on it and say, hey, maybe it's tomorrow afternoon. Maybe it's not tomorrow morning. Maybe I can sleep a little and then I'll feel so much better. And, mental health is like really critical, especially in performing on racing. Like mindset has to be there. You have to have all the confidence in order to drive this 800 horsepower machine. Right.
Yeah.
And if you're not in the right mindset, you're just going to lose every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a really, really great way to put it. Something I always wonder too is, at the end of the day, I'm like, what motivates somebody more, a win or a loss? So I guess yours is funny because I'm like lucky to get to talk to somebody that literally has a metric of like winning and losing, in a pretty literal sense. I guess, like, what do you think drives you more, like after a race,
Yeah, I think what ends up driving me is just to achieve that vision that I've had in my head. And that can, apply to anything that I've done in my life, whether that's DJing or videography. Like there's a specific like picture I have of like standing on the podium or DJing in front of a crowd or whatever. And then when I'm in that moment, like that's awesome. But the funny thing is, as soon as that's over, I'm like, all right, well, like, let's win another race, or like let's do another big DJ event, or let's close another deal in private equity.
Absolutely.
Like let's build more businesses. There's never like a thing of complacency with me. It's always, hey, okay, that's awesome. Like I achieved this. What's the next thing?
Yeah. So, I was listening to this neuroscientist talk a little bit about how we pursue joy and how we find that just literally chemically. And he was like, it's actually not achievements, it's the journey that we go on to get to those achievements. And to have that validated from a neuroscientist, I was like, man, it's real. Like you can't get complacent. At the end of the day, like if you just achieve something and then are like, all right, I'm chilling now, you got to keep,
because you're gonna fall behind on the next thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
At the same time, like you should definitely take time and, pat yourself on the back for doing whatever. And maybe I'm not that great at doing that sometimes. But it's important to recognize achievements and stuff. But then again, it's kind of, hey, all right, well, cool. Let's do this again, or let's do this bigger.
Yeah.
And for me, it's usually let's do this bigger. You know what I mean? So.
Absolutely. What's so I know there's high stakes in really every aspect of what you're doing. What's like a high stakes scenario that you've been in recently with private equity where you're like, oh my gosh, you're like, that was I'd love to hear a story if you've got one about that too.
Yeah. I mean, negotiating deals can get very tense sometimes. Yeah. And I'm actually helping out a friend of mine raising some equity. And basically, the buyer came in and was like, offered a really not market deal, and it wasn't really fair terms, but I do this every day, right? So I kind of know what's fair, what's not fair, what's reasonable, what's not reasonable. And there was just some like high tension of, I called them out on it and they didn't respond very well, right? And it's like, wow, kind of a little taken aback because they look at me, I look like I'm 15 and have all this like M&A knowledge, and it's so in terms of tension, like there was definitely there, but again, you just kind of rely on the facts, especially when you're negotiating deals. And it's like, let's try to put all emotions aside and just, hey, like this is what my friend needs in order to be secure. Like that's what it comes down to. It's not really about the money. It's more about, hey, how does he set himself up? How does he set his family up for success if something happens to him, if whatever? And that kind of resonates really well. And it's like, hey, we're not trying to like nickel and dime you. We're just trying to do what's right by my friend. You know what I mean?
It's explaining what it's rooted in, like this is, that's the thing. I think sometimes we forget our basic needs of being like, hey, at the basic level, this is what I need to be able to make something happen. Because if I don't do this, then I'm at a risk of, never not being able to pay my bills or not being able to enter into something that's safe for my business. And then you just state what your needs are. I mean, it's funny that we forget to express what our reasoning is behind it, other than just being like, these are just numbers,
Yeah. Yeah. And luckily, in the private equity world, I think people are generally receptive to just, very logic-based arguments. There's always a middle ground. Like no one leaves like the negotiating table happy or angry, ideally, right? You try to find a common ground and just move through problems, because on the other side of just the transactional part, I mean, the whole purpose of private equity is to improve businesses. And I work for a firm, IMB Partners, that focuses on building businesses, right? And especially in the lower middle market, we focus on utility services companies as well as GovCon. And we're not the evil private equity firm in New York that fires everybody. Like, you can make money that way, but it's not an enjoyable path. No one's happy. I mean, not the private equity guys who are doing that. Like, they're not really happy. Neither, obviously, the company's not happy. The people that are losing no, that's terrible. And I like building businesses. I've worked on a bunch of different companies where, we've added capabilities and people and gotten the right, executive team to really go and build a platform. And that's worked out really well, because a lot of these times, like, there are founders that deep down, they just want to be a billable employee to, the federal government. Right. And this whole running the business thing is like really not for them. And so when we can bring in somebody that has run a lot of these smaller businesses, converted them to medium or large size businesses, it alleviates like the founder's need for, hey, I just want to work for the government. Like, I don't want to run my business. Like, this HR stuff, this finance stuff, this is like annoying.
I mean, it's a lot.
It is.
It's a lot.
It is. But again, it's all about people. But also, business would be a lot easier without people.
It would. It would. But it's like, hey, we're here and we're doing this thing for some reason,
Exactly.
No, that's amazing though. I think that would be really, really cool to see. Probably the relief some leaders might feel whenever you are able to come in and give them an opportunity to continue growing their business and, give them a game plan.
Yeah, no, like there was, this woman, her name was Karen Trowbridge, and it was a deal I did at my previous firm where, we acquired her business and we acquired 2 or 3 other companies. And then, sitting in the board meeting, she was really taken aback because she wanted to take a step back, kind of focus on her family. And we helped, input a management team. And And then she was really surprised. She's like, wow, I remember when we were only like this big doing only these contracts, and now we're like triple the size. This is crazy. And it's really cool. And it's a great way for both parties to win, not just us, because in every deal that IMB does, we always focus on seller rollover, meaning the original founders retain, 20 to 30% of their ownership stake, because we view it more as like hey, this is a handshake. We're definitely recognizing value of what you've done today, but we want to really focus on what we're doing tomorrow.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's pretty incredible to be able to offer that kind of relief to somebody, and also just give, again, the bigger vision. I was a little curious though. Have you watched Succession?
I think I've like watched an episode or two.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just wondering. I was like, I feel like they paint this. There's always these like over dramatized pictures of personal or private equity stuff.
Yeah, the finance world. No, I definitely when I was in college trying to learn about how this world worked, I was watching the 1987 Martin Scorsese film Wall Street.
Oh
and
yeah,
I was like, oh yeah, like this is what I'm doing, and I guess I was trying to I guess mold myself into what I thought was like the right thing to do, or but it's Hollywood. It's a great entertainment piece, but it's not reality. And the only way that I've been able to just adapt is just by being in this world for 6 years now, between my investment banking job, my 2 private equity careers. And it's been really cool because at this point in my career, I'm transitioning from just being the junior guy that's doing the diligence questions, running the financial models, to sourcing my own deals in the GovCon space, because that's where I have a lot of expertise.
Yes.
It's really just a nuanced and tricky space. It's not particularly hard to learn. It's not like I'm trying to understand big pharma, like a bunch of crazy drug names that you can't understand unless you're a PhD. But there's all these like weird, like kind of, nuances and rules and stuff like that I've only been able to learn just by being in this industry for 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah.
And it's tremendously valuable because there aren't very many people that know this. And so it's just been a way to differentiate myself between, again, being a typical junior person who's great at execution of just the typical deal process, to being kind of a thought leader within my firm of, hey, this is like kind of what's going on in the government services market. Here's where I think we can play to our advantage. Like, for instance, it's no secret that we have 2 main large adversaries in the world, right? So, but we're not on a big World War II style battlefield. So what's like the most important piece? It's intelligence, right? Because, and those budgets are classified. It's a really unique space, really interesting, fascinating. But, that's kind of like the way to go in terms of investing, because that's a super valuable piece. We have to stay ahead of our adversaries. And the work that's the federal government is doing, it's mind-blowing.
I can imagine. I mean, and I can see how you would be a total asset to them, knowing some of that stuff that, nobody else is really, there's not a lot of people anyways that are diving into that world. That's pretty cool. Was there something that kept pushing you and making you more curious to go down that road versus like something more generalized that other folks might do?
So, yeah, I mean, funny thing, well, I guess my switch from investment banking, which was sell side M&A. So basically I helped sell businesses on behalf of owners, or their public companies, on shareholders. And then the first private equity job I got was for a firm that specialized in defense and government services. So we only focused on that sector. And, early, I guess, going in from college to my first job out of school, it was, hey, you want to be a generalist, you want to like get exposure to a bunch of different industries. And, I did that. But then I've realized, hey, if you specialize in something, that's a way to like stand out and actually make you like focus. And the government services world, it's just interesting. You just pick up on like a few things a day, right? But when a few things a day turns into 4 years, you're like, wow, I like didn't even realize like nobody else knows this, because it's second nature. Man,
that's pretty cool getting to dive into something like that and having so many people be, I don't know, it just makes you a standout, that's something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily do, because the rules are written, and it's hard sometimes when you're the one who's probably having to figure out stuff on your own.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it's like, as long as you're able to understand, like, the rules are definitely like there are a bunch of rules in government contract, but it's like they're not all written in one place. And so if you can understand that, and again, the firm that I've worked with, IMB Partners, is such an entrepreneurial firm. We're really small. We only have 10, 12 people total. And they've given me the leeway that definitely other big firms would not have, to go out and, hey, like, I'm going to go out to this conference. I'm going to go meet with this person. I try to have, like, there's, interaction goals and stuff, kind of like a BD role in terms of there's certain metrics that I'm trying to hit, but it's also really cool to see where those relationships go. So I've been working with an advisor that I worked at my previous firm, introduced him to our firm, and now we're on the path to working together going forward. So like that's cool to see, because a few months ago we just happened to bump into each other at a GovCon event. You know what I mean? So, but again, IMB Partners and Taurus Richardson, who's the founder, it's just a great family office, right? Like we invest our own founders capital as well as a network of family offices, and again, super founder friendly, and we want to partner with people. And that's the most important part when you're doing business with somebody, is you have to be able to see eye to eye or resolve conflict. And because there's always going to be conflict. That's like the human nature, right? But in order to work with people and move on and build something better, like that's the focus.
So is there a difference between personal equity Nate and race car driving Nate? Do you notice any, or have you found
private equity Nate and race car driver Nate? Yeah. I mean, look, I'll admit, hopefully I've been, you can tell, like, super friendly when talking and stuff like that.
You're incredible. You're
but as soon as that helmet goes on, no, I'm out to kill you.
I love that, man. I love that. Yeah.
Like, it's so funny to get in that headspace of racing, because you just get angry, you just gotta get mad. You gotta want it. You gotta want to win. And, you don't have to, nuance or negotiate anything. Like, no, there is no negotiating in racing. It's, let's try to beat the other guy.
Yeah, you're like, you know what I mean? My car is getting the fuck in front of your car, and you better believe it. Like,
exactly.
No
like, I'm gonna make you look bad. That's like my job. Like, I'm gonna get right on your door, and I'm gonna stay there, and then I'm gonna ditch you on my lead run. So it's funny.
Well, you gotta have killer instincts in those moments,
you do. And there's no secret, type A personality, but every race car driver has to have one, because we're out here to win. I mean, no one's saying, oh, I show up to the race to finish last.
No, right? Yeah, I do see some parallels of, I feel like what you're doing at private equity is also extremely results oriented, and so you've got all these places where it's like heavily determined, like your results are a direct indication of how well you're doing.
Yeah.
Is that tricky to navigate sometimes, or are you like, have you just always been like big sports guy and things like that growing up? Or
I've definitely been competitive my entire life. So I think I mentioned I skateboarded, but so it wasn't just kind of skateboard for fun. It was, skateboard competitively.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude.
Like, I'd win like local contests.
That's
nothing
so cool.
Nothing crazy. It was
Where did you grow up at?
Vienna, Virginia. So right outside DC.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So there were some like local shop contests that I'd enter, and it was kind of a home field advantage, because I would go to this one skate park every single day, just practice my routine over and over and over again. So when it came down to, you have 45 seconds or a minute to do a run and nail every single trick, wouldn't fall, and it would just flow like that. Just like one trick after another. And so, that competitive mindset has always been there. And then on a little bit more of a nerdy side, I was a Life Smarts state champion in my senior year of high school. And so what Life Smarts was, it was basically like a trivia quiz bowl type thing. And it was really cool, because I ended up getting to go to LA for free, and miss school, which, as a senior in high school, you can't beat that.
Hell no. Yeah, that's awesome.
And but it's, again, just like being able to answer the question before the other team or whatever. It was a really fun experience. And I actually got to volunteer at their national conference a few months ago, because it was held in Arlington, and it's really close to where I live, and it was kind of a fun trip down memory lane. Like, I don't have time to like give a ton of my time to stuff, but it was like, I really wanted to do that. And so I had to come back and be, like a judge or an official type person and do a few of those. It was so funny, but it was so long ago, I don't remember like didn't remember exactly the process and stuff like that, but it was just really fun and definitely sparked some nostalgia. And
yeah, that's so much fun, and that's cool to like get to reconnect with your roots a little bit. Do you cruise around still on your skateboard at all?
Every once in a while, but I also don't want to get hurt for
I was about to say that'd be risky, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I broke my ankle. I don't know if you can see, I still have all my scars on my legs and stuff from all that. And so
yeah, especially at that level. I mean, you're just falling. I mean, you learn how to fall, which is good,
right?
But like, I mean, one thing goes wrong, a snap of an ankle or something, that would just be extremely detrimental to, to what you do now.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. And I'm also a bit older. And so, falling hurts a little bit more.
Have you noticed? I try to fall every now and then though. That's something I realized. I was like, man, I haven't fallen in a while. I think that's a problem. I'm going to get old.
Yeah.
It does hurt more. It's funny. Yeah. I don't know what that is. That's cool. Run out and hit a few kick flips or something every now and then. And yeah. Cool, man. So how does what you do now, I guess, at private equity and driving a race car, how do they bleed into each other? Have you seen weird ways where one's
totally.
like inform the other?
So because I was saying earlier, it's like, hey, draw best practices from over here, over there. They don't seem to necessarily mix together like private equity and racing, but they really do. So from private equity to racing on that side, just being able to understand how businesses work, right? And understand who the key decision makers are, helps me target, potential partner opportunities, and then delivering hey, this is how I'm going to deliver you value, right? Because I am a numbers guy, right? And so I do outline and hey, this is what this aspect of my program has. This is the value that it has. This is the value it has. And I have a whole end of year review with each of my partners that I set up. And I'm this is how the year went. This is what the value that I delivered. Here's what your investment was. Here's your return on investment. And I know basically nobody else does that.
No, I was about to say, is that standard?
No. They were all the partners that I sat down with last year were really impressed. And so that's been really useful. And then going from the racing side to the private equity side, so, I mean, basically having to go out and cold call potential partners was a big step in getting me comfortable with doing the same thing in the private equity world. Because again, in the private equity world, I'm in this spot where I need to get away from being just the junior person and to try to transition more to the senior person. But it's two different roles, right? Being the Excel guru, which, that's great. That has a value. But the bigger value is being the person that can communicate industry expertise, source deals, and then lead and execute them. So, and it's not an easy jump, and a lot of people can't make that jump, right? And so it's difficult.
Yeah. No, I would imagine that would be difficult, but that's pretty neat to see that you're if you look deeply enough, I just believe everything bleeds into everything.
It does.
And I think that's pretty neat.
The fun thing about, this stuff is my DJ career, which is how I funded racing in college, because I was a DJ and a bartender.
That's so cool. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah. But I was gonna say the way that bleeds into the racing stuff is I do this halftime show where I still I make mixes and I hit the play button, but then I get on the microphone and I do this activation where it's a mix of interviewing other drivers, throwing away stuff, giveaway shirts on behalf of Buddy Club and GT Radial and Holly, and then I also play interactive games with the audience.
What?
Yeah.
That's what?
So we have
That's
a water
cool.
bottle chugging challenge. You could, especially when it's hot. We're going to St. Louis next week. Last year was 105 3 days in a row. So water bottle challenge, and then we have tire stacking games where they have to roll tires around a tire and back. And then what else do we have? Those are kind of the main games. But the idea is hey, I mean throwing t-shirts is great. And I copied the idea from Von Gittin Jr., who's a mentor to me. But his show, it doesn't have a stage. It kind of has just some tossing of stuff. And I was well, let me bring in my production knowledge from being a DJ and apply this to this and just make it way bigger. And
totally,
that's what it started last year, is just asking a few trivia questions and kind of doing that. Because it's also a great way to plug partners, right? I can ask, hey, for Mega Life battery, what's the difference between a lithium ion battery and a lead acid battery? And so they get value there. But then to entertain the audience, I also ask who's what car did Dom drive in Fast and the Furious 1 or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to be like organic and mix in the partner stuff with organic questions. But then the audience participation thing was like, people really want, like, yeah, they're here to watch the show, which is the driving, but I think everyone, like me, like myself when I was 13, I wanted to be a participant.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is going to be so much better if I just stop asking questions and like get people to play games. And it's really fun. We did a push-up challenge in Orlando and got like 5 guys just go like, it was really hot. I was like, oh, yeah, let's do it for a minute. And then, it was tough, but they made it through, and it's a lot of fun. So,
man, that is so cool. So doing DJing, you're like, you learn how to rile up a club and get people hyped up. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's a really fun show. It runs about half an hour. And again, that's half an hour of value delivered to partners. Right.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
There's only the guy that I stole the idea from, but then made it my own. He's like the only other one doing it. And there's a few others that, maybe they'll like rev their car up and throw a few stickers, but it's like, I want to make it a show, right?
Yeah,
and like that has like a schedule, has flow, and everything else. It's not just kind of some hobbled together thing thrown together at the last minute.
And at the end of the day, it is a performance.
Exactly.
So that's really cool. Getting everybody super engaged and fired up. That's got to be great for, like, I don't know, your social media and all. I mean, all that. There's so many little things to think about when it comes to doing this stuff, I feel like.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, look, I've loved performing in front of people from DJing. I think that's where I got comfortable with it, because the first time I DJ'd, it was for a team owner that I was a videographer for. I was like 19 or 20. I wasn't even old enough to like be able to get into the club. It was funny. It was like, yeah, just leave your ID in there and just like walk past the bouncer or whatever. And it's like, I'm the DJ or whatever. And it was a nerve-wracking like hour of me opening for this guy that I work for at a club on New Year's Eve in DC. And it was really cool. But I mean, it was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. And then as I did it more and more, I just got more and more comfortable. And then it's so much fun to have the crowd like on your side. You know what I mean?
Seriously.
The secret that I have is like, you just got to throw like throwbacks in with new stuff. So like the throwback, like Gold Digger by Kanye West.
Oh my God.
As soon as that acapella comes in, I can't sing, so I'm not going to try. Or I did, but yeah. Anyway, you just hear the crowd just go nuts for it, and it's just so much fun, and it's so infectious. And like that's kind of that same energy applies to when I'm like, where am I going to throw a t-shirt? Is it going to be straight, like whoa, or is it going to be left, whoa, right? Like it's so much fun. So
man,
just get energy from the audience, and you're in the moment. It's like, it's a whole different persona too. Yeah. Because there's race car Nate that just wants to kill anything in front of him. And then there's like DJ, Nate that's just like trying to have fun and just vibe off the audience. You know what I mean? So.
That's super, super neat. I would have so much fun doing that. I feel like shooting out. I've always wanted, it's been a dream of mine to shoot a t-shirt cannon.
Oh, I
Never
did that.
Done one before,
yeah. But that was part of the show too, but I handed the t-shirt cannon to somebody else. So, well, it wasn't supposed to be a t-shirt cannon. It was from my DJ days. It was a CO2 cannon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, those are sick.
T-shirt cannons have regulators. This one doesn't. So it just like shot up 100 feet in the air. Yeah. So when I did it, I always just pointed it straight up because it would just shoot straight up and then it wouldn't go very far. Yeah. And I let another driver, I was like, yeah, why don't you like shoot it? And then he like pointed it, over, like he didn't point it straight up, and it like shot 100 feet into another vendor's like booth, and they got really mad, and then so I'm not allowed to use that anymore, unfortunatately. Man. But the crowd loved that. They were just like, whoa.
They're like, that's insane.
Oh my gosh, it's like, whoa, yeah.
It's pretty neat to awe-inspire a whole crowd of people. So something else I was thinking about, growing up as a kid, I actually lived in Brazil for a little bit, and I remember really cool. Late at night, there would be cars just like drifting down the road, and I was just like, I blew my mind. And then in Atlanta now, there's tons of people who like occupy parking lots and do things like that. What's your take on some of that stuff? I mean,
no, honestly, not really a fan, because it portrays what my motorsport that I've dedicated a significant chunk of my life in a really negative manner, right? Yeah. And so I've never done any of that type of stuff. I've always kept it on the track. Because honestly, like that's also where it separates the talent. I can teach you donuts in this in like 2 seconds.
Yeah,
it doesn't. There's no skill involved, right? I have taught people that don't know how to drive stick, how to do donuts. But when we're going 80 to 100 miles an hour sideways and there's little margin of error, that's where the real skill set is. And that's like so much more entertaining to watch than somebody doing some donuts in a parking lot. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate like that's happened. But on the positive side of things, for racing as a whole, the Netflix series Drive to Survive has been huge.
Sure. Yeah. It's such a,
Yeah. Because it portrays the drivers as like these, it actually has very little to do with racing. It's just more about the personalities behind the drivers and the teams and how they all interact. And it's also like, I've talked to so many people that have like no background in racing at all, but they're like, oh, you're like basically a Formula One driver. I'm like, yeah, basically.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
it's
totally.
like, I'd rather be associated with that than like, oh, you're like the guy that does the street stuff. Like, no, definitely not. That is not at all what I do. And also in this country, there's another big sport, the biggest sport in the country for racing. It just unfortunately hasn't really attracted the entire country. It's more of a specific segment, and that also isn't really a positive thing. But this, the Netflix stuff has done a great job.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. But just again, making it more relatable. And
totally.
That's all I want, right? Is because, hey, I'm like a normal person just like you, right? And like, I just want to share what I love and I'm passionate about with as many people as possible.
And I hope you don't mind me asking. I was just kind of curious as like a novice. I was like, how do people think about it? I was like, I don't know, with some of that stuff that's going on out there. Cause like, I'm like, man, it's, I think the other part of it too is outside of like the harmful, like, associating drivers with what's going on over there. I think the big thing too is just the danger aspect of it. Like it seems like people are in a position where, all kinds of stuff could go wrong, and it's just a bunch of novices out there, doing their thing.
No, so, it's scary. It's like, I don't know why. I mean, I guess I really don't understand it because from my perspective, I'm wearing a fire suit, a helmet, gloves, like this roll cage, this like 6-point harness, and it's, it's
anything
really
can
safe.
Go wrong.
It's really safe. Yeah. And then the stuff that they're doing there, I mean, it's just like not even contemplated because they're like trying to dodge the car. Like, it's just like a stupid game. Like, how are you going to win that game? I guess like I can see how you're going to lose, but yeah, I mean, that's why I also just try to steer people away. It's like, hey, like there's no competition there. What I do is competitive, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's a big differentiator, and the speeds that we're going, like, again, everything on the professional side of things is just very, very different. Yeah. And it's really annoying how the media just portrays, oh, they're drift racing in the streets, and it's like it's not the same at all, not even close. It's just like saying, oh yeah, like I went for a walk today and then tomorrow I'm gonna go run a triathlon or something. Like, it's like that's
a good way to put it. That's a really good way to put it.
You're doing the same motion, but it's very, very different.
Extremely different. Different. Man, I think that's that's something I'm like, I definitely get freaked out around seeing that kind of stuff. So for you, you've dedicated your entire life to this craft. Like, when did you start getting to a point where you're like, man, I think I've got something going here. Like, I think I found a little success in this right now. Was there any memory that you have of hitting that moment in your life?
I think it was when I won the US Drift Shootout in 2020. That was when I won my pro license. And that was like one of the best feelings in the world, because it was something that I had worked towards, again, since I was 13. And never had the budget to have a competitive car like this. It was always using this car where I would, I'd finish in the top half, but it just didn't have the power and the technology to really do much more beyond that. And then in 2020, this car right here, this is what I won my pro license in. It was finished 2 weeks before the pandemic, and we had one test day, and then the pandemic happened. And then I was like, all right, well, I've been waiting for this all my life. I'm not going to let the pandemic stop. Like, progress on this, because with a new car you have so many bugs to work out. It's I mean, we basically stripped this thing down completely down to the bare shells that you see over there, and you re-engineer the car from ground up, man. And so again, once you re-engineer a car, like without testing, like there's just a lot of stuff that you have to work through and issues and bugs. So I tested in Englishtown, New Jersey every other weekend for the very beginning of the pandemic, when everything was shut, but you were allowed to, as long as you were in a group of 10 people or less, and we were. And so it was safe and social distance. I mean, it was outside, right? So it wasn't really a risk. Or there was, some risk, but as an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to take some risk.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, we tested it all throughout that year. We blew up a motor. We got the car back together. And then in October, this shootout event happened, which back then it wasn't even clear that was going to happen because of restrictions and all this other stuff, but it ended up happening. And I went undefeated, won my pro license. And like, I remember doing victory burnouts, like celebrating.
Dude.
It was just amazing.
Oh my
the crowd was,
God.
I jumped on the fence, climbed it. Like, yeah, it was so much fun. And so that was just, yeah, I mean, like, I definitely like teared up a bit, like after, like not that night, but like a few days after, I was like, wow, this is literally everything I've worked towards my entire life. And it happened. And like, I didn't know, like, I didn't think, I mean, like you have these goals, but you don't know if they're actually going to work out or not. And and I was like, wow,
that's such a special moment. I would be like, I'm sure you're overwhelmed reflecting on it, and just pouring more into the tank to get to go again for the next big goal. But
yeah, and it wasn't just me. Again, there's so many other people involved, and it's like without my team, especially now without Jerry there by my side, like this car, like it wouldn't be, I would be driving a car that had no engine in it, you know what I mean? Or something like that. Yeah. So it's really a team effort too. It's just not all just me, but for a personal standpoint, it was just a really fulfilling moment.
Absolutely. So what would you tell, any advice to somebody trying to go down a vaguely similar road that you're going down? Anything that you could possibly pass their way?
No, like, I mean, I think a lot of the same process that I've kind of come up with and went and executed on any goal, on learning a new skill. It's just been, hey, what's the vision that you have? What are the steps that you can take and break down so that it's not overwhelming? But just like focus on one thing at a time, realize Rome wasn't built in a day, and just keep working. And then generally things will work out.
Yeah.
As long as your logic is sound and, you're checking like, hey, does this actually make sense? Like, oh, I want to be a race car driver, but the circumstances aren't going to allow me to make that happen. Well, then how do you make the circumstances change?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's like, just don't give up and always focus on the execution portion. And it's tough, but like, distractions can come and, hey, do you really need to sleep that extra hour or can you stay up working? Right. Like that's the question. And then, again, the rewards and like the opportunities are just amazing. Like I never really wanted a normal desk job or whatever like that. Even a 9-to-5, like I experienced that in an internship and I just didn't like looking at the clock at like 4:30 being like, all right, when do I get to go home? Because that's just like not fun. Like even though my private equity career is definitely longer hours than 9-to-5, I really like being able to, okay, I'm just going to like stop working when I'm finished with work today.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what time that's going to be, but it's going to be roughly like this time to this time. But it's kind of nice to not have a set schedule.
Well, it's like at the end of the day, we probably know what we need to do. So, living in this routine, it's cool that you found a way to break out of that and just be like, I'm just going to do what I need to do to get the job done.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm like a David Goggins nerd. That was my thing I got obsessed with for a little bit. If you've ever looked at his stuff, and he said, I'm not done when I'm tired. I'm done when I'm done.
Exactly.
And I was like, I'm like, it sounds so simple, but it's like, yeah, it's true. Pretty amazing. So what's your favorite part of all this right now? Do you have something that is bringing you the most passion? And also long term, are you trying to go like full-time driving, or are you just like, is this kind of the model for now?
So like, to answer your first question, favorite part is, again, just when everything works out, whether that's my private equity career, like seeing what you've worked towards, coming together and going the direction you want it to go. And that applies to race car, obviously, when you're, like our first event this year, it was Formula DRIFT Orlando, and won our top 32 battle, then won our top 16 battle and made it to the grade 8. And last year didn't make it that far. And so like that felt awesome. I was like, wow, like, and especially all the stuff that happened there was power steering pump failed. We had to call our 5 minutes or the car caught on fire between the first and second lap. And I was like, but I still drove the best that I could and I got the win on that battle. And so it wasn't just, just hop in the car and go. There was like so many like random issues to fight through. But so like that was really cool. In terms of like long-term career, I think the private equity stuff and also the racing stuff that will forever be intertwined. Right? I mean, it's just, I like both worlds for their own reasons, and it's really cool to be a part of both.
Man, that's amazing. Well, hey, thank you so much for hopping on this. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. This gave me so much inspiration. I know our audience is going to love it as well. Is there anything you want to plug right now? I know we've got your Instagram and all of your different socials. Anything at all that people should be looking out for, Nate?
Yeah, no, I mean, just want to say, well, thanks, Blake, for having me. Really appreciate it.
Great to meet you, man.
Yeah, and then obviously Jerry Yang for letting us have this podcast in his garage, and then IMB Partners, committed service brand, Buddy Club. Feel free to check all those guys out. Just DMing me if you ever need parts. Happy to hook you up with a discount.
Awesome.
But again, it's been a wild ride and want to continue in every aspect of my life. Right. So
absolutely. Well, hey, thank you again. Yep. And everybody, this was the Gem Series. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Gem Series, the podcast for anybody dedicated to investing in themselves. If you'd like to see the resources mentioned in this episode, learn more about what we are up to at Rocket Level, or come over and join our team, just click on the links below. Until next time, this is Blake Chapman, and remember to be awesome and do awesome things.